Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming you all on International Affairs. This is broadcasting live from the Dhaka's SATV studio. My name is Shamsul Alam Panto. As I bring in the updates from around the globe, we know that the US and Israel war on Iran has exceeded the month frame, and we are in to the 32nd day into this war, and we understand that it is affecting multiple economies worldwide. Before discussing all the moves that are being played by all the parties, let me introduce my extended panel. Here in the studio, we have retired Major Nasir Uddin Ahmed with us, who is, of course, appeared on various shows with us. He's a defense analyst and a columnist. I welcome him onto this program. Alongside, we have John Charles Dalton in the studio, who's our international consultant. It's great to have you again on the studio. I'm very happy to be back with International Affairs. Alongside on Zoom from Islamabad, Pakistan, we will have our correspondent, Mohammad Musab. I want to start with John Dalton. We've been hearing so many stories regarding the Middle East. We've heard about how the South Pars gas field has been attacked, and attacks have been sprawling from one side to another. And we also see that Zelensky from Ukraine, the leader of Ukraine, visiting Qatar in an attempt to understand what are these Shahid drones. I want to know, how are you feeling about this? What other observations do you have for us?
Well, I think the principal observation that I would make is that since Iran has not lost, it's winning. That this is a war of exhaustion. They are able to sort of take the punch, sort of like rope-a-dope that Ali Foreman had back in the Rumble in the Jungle. They're taking all the blows and being able to respond. And as in that situation, the longer they can hold out, the more embarrassing it is for the United States and Israel, who had claimed such superiority that they would be able to end this quickly.
Right.
And I don't think that they understand the composition of the Iranian government, which is basically a two-tiered structure. They're dealing with the people down the bottom, the president, the parliament, those kind of people. But above them, a unit that was created to protect the Islamic Revolution is the Ayatollah and the Republican Guard. They're waging the war. People down here, the citizens, the normal bureaucrats, they're going about their business. And these people are the ones who are waging the war. There seems to be no constructive contact between Israel, Washington, and this little tier of the Iranian government that seems absolutely committed to prosecuting and persecuting this war and being very successful at it if you look at pictures from Tel Aviv. So I think in the marches yesterday in Tel Aviv, by Israeli residents who were sick of the war.
Right. They were protesting the fact that this war should not continue.
It should not, it absolutely should not, because Israel has never been subjected to this kind of punishment. They've meted it out. They've given it to everybody else. This is the first time they're getting it back. And the population is not simply able to absorb that they are not the chosen ones who are protected by some divine right. And therefore, in my view, I think that they're starting to lose faith in the government, which is great.
To some conciseness, I must say that the US had placed aircraft carriers in both the Mediterranean as well as the Persian Gulf. And we hear the news outlets saying that the Gerald R. Ford has taken a back step, which they have moved themselves away from the front lines of the war. It is now docked in Croatia amidst repairs that is being conducted. However, it's being said that there was a laundry room fire. I want to ask this question to Dr. Nasir. During this war, information is very critical. In the first couple of days of the war, we've seen how a US aircraft was downed, and initially it was said that it was the Iranians, but however, Kuwait had then said that it was a friendly fire and that it was not intended to bring down Allied aircraft. However, right now the war remains in a very effective situation. We've seen it affecting economies in Asia, even after Iran's claim that they're allowing some of these vessels to cross the Strait of Hormuz. That includes China, India, Bangladesh, and a host of some Asian countries. What do you think? This strait is not being opened, especially as Donald Trump called it the Strait of Trump.
Okay. Thank you, Victor, and warm greetings to my dear viewers and my co-panelist, John. I said it before, too, that it is a famous saying by Senator Johnson, the first casualty of any war is the truth. So the starting remarks from your side that how these informations are coming up and what is the fact about the ship that embarked on Croatian side. Definitely there is a accident and they call it fire, but definitely there was something which was beyond the control. Had there been any fire from the laundry shop or laundry facilities itself, I think there was no issues of taking it back up to Croatia. So definitely there is some damage, number one. Number two, you see, in the military, with my experience of 20 years in the Bangladesh Army, and I fought in the Gulf War back in 1991,
right.
and also I served in the United Nations for peacekeeping operation in Africa. So all this experience gathers the conclusion that there should be some exercise before the actual commencement of the operations. Had it been in a military exercise, there should be a command post exercise where two forces commanders are made and they start war gaming. It's a very popular concept of designing a war. If you talk about the intelligence assessment, there is always a intelligence exercise followed by media, psychological, logistic backup, everything there. In this particular case, you see, first of all, Donald Trump declared that what is his target? His target, he said, to neutralize the nuclear sites and collapse the capacity of Iranian Navy. And actually what we found, still Hormuz Strait, as you have rightly said, Donald Trump said it is a Trump Strait, it is under control of Iran. There is no issues that without Iran's permission, some ship can come or go back. And very recently, Iranian parliament has taken a decision regarding imposing some on each and every ship being crossing the Hormuz Strait.
Correct.
There is a fee for the embarkment or the anchoring in the Iranian port or any other port for that matter. There are 4 other countries which are exporting petroleum through this particular strait, and it is well recognized that almost 20% of the total world energy passes through this particular strait.
Correct.
So there is a levy inbuilt in the port side. In top of that, if there is another levy for crossing the Hormuz Channel, definitely that is going to have an impact worldwide, number one. Number two, the Donald Trump's military objectives could not be achieved, and intelligence-wise, it is mostly the Mossad which calculated there will be a serious uprising in the civil community in Iran, because there had been an incident of a lady being killed during the police custody, and uprising of the young generation because of the unemployment, shortage of food, shortage of many other facilities as expected by the citizen. And more seriously, after the sad incident of their top religious leader, spiritual leader, at the very outset of the war, definitely there was a expectation from the Mossad or the CIA that there will be a collapse in the command channel. But Iran successfully could counter that, and there is no issues with the command structure of Iran as on today, even after losing their number of military leaders and spiritual leaders. Then if you talk about the media, it is almost like a Vietnam War. It is said the war was first lost in Washington because media did not support them, and then it was lost in Vietnam. Here is, as you have rightly said, the No Kings movement is going on. It is not only in Washington or in around the Pentagon. It has spread all over America and beyond America. Countries like Portugal, countries like even Tel Aviv in Israel.
Yes.
There are protests, the no king. We don't want any king. So this kingship, instead of democracy, instead of respecting the values of people, respecting the buying capacity of the people, making the world unstable, these are not liked by the world community. So media-wise, they have got defeated. And finally, if you talk about the psychology or the logistic backup, the world scenario is the testimony that how they have failed. They could not keep the Hormuz Strait under control. The whole world did not support Donald Trump's action. He invited the European Union to get together and get the Hormuz under their control. But that was a failed attempt.
And they have very gently said no in
Yeah.
other terms. That was a very important statements coming from Dr. Nasser. I want to put in the framework that we have seen over the last week before coming to our Zoom connections. We've seen Donald Trump issuing a 48-hour ultimatum. And then at the end of that, he had said, we will not harm any of this energy infrastructure up until another 10 days going into April. I want to welcome in our geopolitical correspondent, Norman Floyd Barnes, joining us from District of Columbia, Washington. As you were hearing the discussion in the studio regarding the No Kings protest, the third time that this is happening, and not only so, various movements in the Middle East. We have seen the Iranian military Khatam al-Anbiya spokesperson Ibrahim Zolfagari coming to say that Donald Trump is negotiating with himself, and he has not mentioned who in the Iranian government is calling for a negotiation. More on that with our Pakistani correspondent. But I want to know from Norman, what are the other updates that you have for us from Washington, D.C.? Norman, I hope you're having a good morning.
Greetings, good morning from the district. Today is Sunday. Tomorrow there's an expectation we have uh, transportation security people who are out of work. TSA has people not been paid for several weeks, months, getting the months time. People have left the job. They have quit. They got other jobs. People are calling out. So consequently, the transportation issue in the United States is a big mess, meaning major airports like the one here in Washington, there's a 4 hour wait to get into the terminal. And then there's another 2 or 3 hours wait to get through the screening process. And the reason for that is that we do not have enough skilled, trained screeners working right now. The government has brought in ICE agents to basically provide supplemental security for crowd control, but they do not have the skills or the legal authority to do any screening. So the issue is still the shortage of screeners. So the lines will still be longer as we go into what we call spring break. We're getting into the Easter holidays. So the transportation issue in the United States is as I call it, a big hot mess right now. You're looking at 4 to 5 hours of getting in the airport, and more or less coming back into the United States, you have the same thing in reverse. So right now, the issue is the president has put a emergency sanction, emergency bill in order to pay the TSA agents, hopefully today, or well, hopefully Monday, by Monday, to give them some payments. But the problem still remains. The TSA system has basically failed. The Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security funding bill has failed on the floor. Congress has went home for 2 weeks vacation, so there'll be no votes on that. So even if Monday, let's say Monday, the funds are put in to pay these employees, it will be too late. The situation is basically for every day that we have this shutdown, you're looking at 3 days of recovery from the time. So it will take at least a month or so before we get back to full operations, pending operational staffing. People have quit. Over 400 quit Friday. Uh, we got 61,000 employees. Uh, Half of them are not working. Half of them are planning who are working. They can't go home because they don't have the money, the fuel. People are selling blood to basically try to make ends meet. They don't have food to put on the table. They don't have. They can't pay for daycare. So this is again another hot mess that is going on in the United States. In addition to the protests that is happening. So right now we have a situation here where the Americans are being affected at the points, the kitchen tables, and even during the time they're trying to travel.
Of course.
Companies here are now passing on that transportation, the cost of this war on to the consumers. One company I will note, United States partial postal delivery, the U.S. Postal Service delivery service has imposed an 8% surplus for the cost of transportation fuel onto every single consumer that is using that service. So you're going to see a lot of hurt coming up for the people of the United States. I'm saying the people who are basically have to dig deeper into their pockets, decide whether or not we eat a meal today or do we pay the bill. They have to make that decision. So right now, it is a hot mess.
I must thank Norman Floyd Burns from Washington, District of Columbia. I want to focus back into the studio with John Dalton. You were hearing Norman on how he was saying that government employees have not been paid up, and this is not the first time around. In the last 3 months, we've seen 2 American citizens being eliminated by the hands of the immigration agency, ICE, betterly known as. Not only so, the question, the people versus the government. We also hear about a midterm election coming up in the United States, and some social media, it took to storm on social media. Some people were standing in front of the gas stations, taking pictures with the price chart behind them in this United States, how the price of per gallon of fuel has gone up. How do you see this energy crisis looming all across the world, including the United States?
Well, I'm happy to be here. The easy answer. Norman is describing a third world hellhole, which the United States has become under Donald Trump. No resources, no protection, arbitrary arrest and detention. I mean, so the United States is, under Donald Trump, has been sliding actually, and in terms of the world's perception, coming down. And so, I mean, this really, the No King's March is an example of it. But at the same time, I think that if you look at all of the preliminary elections that have been held, seat after seat has been flipped from Republican to Democrat. Republicans are unable to hold on to the seats that were safe seats. Trump won by 20 points, for example. A new Democrat will come in and win by 15 points. Trump is totally underwater in terms of all of the polls. And he was led with bad information, don't you think, Major? He was with bad information. Mossad fed information that this was going to be an easy fight. And they did not understand the consequences on energy, on fuel. And so he's now in deep in a situation where he does not have a plan to get out. He had no plan to get in, no plan to get out. That is a strategic blunder of enormous proportions. And he and Hegseth bear the major responsibility for this. Hegseth seems to be wanting to be the macho king and like double down in terms of force as a solution to this situation. I mean, Iran has been in business as the Persian Empire since 350 before the Common Era. They've been there for 3,000 years. You're not going to overthrow them with some simple little toss of the hat, no matter how much power you think you have. So Trump has stumbled badly. He's penalizing the American citizens. American citizens are awakening to this, and there are political consequences now and more coming down the pike.
Of course, that was important. Not only that, Donald Trump is looking for an off-ramp. Much more on that later. However, I want to ask this question because Dr. Nasir has a military background. There has been a news that has been coming in that states there has been a manpower shortage inside the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. They're on the crumble, their manpower shortage. However, the US forces are now planning, as per the Pentagon report, there is going to be Marines in a ground offensive towards Iran. How much of it do you think will be a success?
That is a very alarming news that has come up regarding the might of Israeli defense forces. And not less than the chief of the defense forces, he said that he is running shortage of soldiers, and anytime their defense system may collapse. What is the reason? Number one, as John was telling, that there was no exactly accurate information regarding the strength of Iran and its inbuilt capacity.
Right.
It has an inbuilt capacity because of the long heritage, not only the from 1979 when the Ayatollah Khomeini took over, not that, before that also it was the hub of Islamic power. That is no denying fact. And world history, world culture, many things were rooted from this particular land. So this particular spirit is one of the major factors that drives Iran, number one. Number two, that Iranians are mostly the Shias within our division of the Muslims. Shia and Sunni is the major division. So they are the Shias, and worldwide Shias are the minority. So minority always has a very strong concept, and they have the spirit of so-called Islamic jihad, because they call it Imam. That is the grandson of our Holy Prophet, and he was assassinated, and his grandson was also assassinated, and this all has a heritage that they want to take the revenge on Sunnis and other non-Muslims of their blood being shedded by their predecessors.
Right.
So that spirit you see till today during the month of Muharram, you see in the streets of Pakistan or even in Bangladesh, people throw their blades, sharp knives on their chest, on their back, to shed bloods, to show their sympathy. That is the spirit of the Shias. So that spirit you cannot kill with the so-called some threat or some missile or something like that. That is the inbuilt power of the Iranians, number one. Number two, if you talk about the casualties, yes, Iran lost 2,000 plus, but these are not the so-called dedicated soldiers. USA is facing a serious charge that why they had to attack the girls' school where the minor students, their parents and teachers were killed brutally with Tomahawk missile. So that's all created a serious issue in the entire world. Militarily, psychologically and economically, it is a tremendous pressure that the whole world is tumbling now because of the uprising of the crude oil and the fall of the gold. And even Iran has given another card that if you come and collect fuel with the currency other than US dollar, they are going to consider it in different way. So if that is successful, that is will be a huge blow. Already USA is in a blow, the Israeli is a blow, because as you have rightly said that Ukrainian President Zelensky, he is in the Middle East. And what capacity he has in the Middle East? He has something to take, that is the financial, because he has a lot of energy. He is not energy hungry. He needs money and technology. That cannot be provided by the Middle East. So it is well understood. Middle East is seeking for the inbuilt military capacity of the Ukrainians, and that is the drone. The way they have fought against the Russians, that is very alarming. Now the defense mechanism of the Middle East has collapsed. There is no denying.
4 years in the Ukraine war with Russia. Of course, they have some kind of expertise that the Middle East wants to exploit or understand.
And the capacity built up by lot of US dollars being paid to the so-called arms dealer of the USA. What is the result? Now, today you see in the news the aluminium industries of Kuwait and Bahrain was under attack. Previously it was the
oil infrastructure.
And they said now they have attempted the aluminium factories, and already Iran has declared that they should evacuate, or they should vacate the American education institution, universities in the Middle East. That is their next target.
Of course.
So where should they go?
It follows a structure of dependencies, Middle Eastern dependency on its Western allies. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a very brilliant discussion happening in our studios. Production is instructing me for a short break. Afterwards, we will talk about how the world leaders plan on negotiating. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Alam Panto.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan.
Opening an open war conflict with them.
Testing nuclear missiles.
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing.
Special and exclusive footage that is being played on SATV's screen.
Really coming to terms with Hamas.
Damage estimated between this entire issue.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
Preserving biodiversity and tackling climate change.
We cannot protect the planet before we negotiate peace.
Where is it going? Is it understanding the needs of its people before the needs of this global world?
For China to come to agreement,
They will face better projects.
With presidency of China and President Lee of South Korea.
Trump's White House that is in favor of these things.
Simply not enough action being taken to address the problem of fossil fuels.
What their plan initially is towards the Caribbean, a place that has been met with two types of disasters.
Bangladeshi students at the same level of opportunity internationally and domestically.
International Affairs. Watch every Sunday to Thursday at 2 p.m. only on SATV. Back on International Affairs, today I am joined by a huge range of panelists, but I want to introduce this time around our Pakistan correspondent Mohammad Musab from Islamabad. There is political movements regarding the US-Israel attack on Iran, and of course Pakistan is now in a position of playing some sort of negotiation after 1 month of fighting between all of these parties and Iran. We understand that the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt is going to be in attendance, being received by the foreign minister Ishaq Dar of Pakistan. How are you feeling about this? The fact that Pakistan sees itself in the middle of this negotiation table. Of course, Pakistan has friendly ties with Iran, and one cannot ignore the fact of the closeness between US President Donald Trump and the General Asim Munir. So I want to ask you from Pakistan, how are you feeling? What are the local news inside Pakistan? How is normal citizens inside Pakistan seeing the fact that their country is in the midst of this war? More from Mohammad Musab. I believe
We've seen over the past year that Field Marshal Asim Munir and the Prime Minister of Pakistan were very cordial.
While we're waiting for Mohammed, one of the side effects of this war is the number of refugees from Iran that are crossing over the border into Pakistan. So Pakistan, the same thing happened in Afghanistan when the Russians invaded. Many people crossed over into Baluchistan, and so the same thing is happening now. Iranians are running north to try to get up to the border, and Pakistan is could be overrun with like millions of refugees. Which is something they do not need or want. They have economic problems of their own.
That was a very important information. I want to know how Mohammad Musab sees this. I believe we've had an audio interruption, but I want to connect Musab. I want to know how you're feeling about this worldwide issue.
Okay, I can.
So Pakistan
I think he's
is
gone.
playing its important role. Pakistan is playing its brotherly role, not just with Iran, but also its diplomatic role with the United, trying to open up the Strait of Hormuz. If you saw yesterday, the Pakistani Prime Minister talked to the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. The call lasted for a very long time. After that, the Pakistani Foreign Minister, Mr. Ishaq Dar, spoke to Abbas Araghchi, the Foreign Minister of Iran. And later in the night, the Pakistani Foreign Minister took to X and he tweeted that Pakistan is now telling the whole world this good news that 20 more vessels to cross the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this is great news for the Pakistani diplomatic community, for the Pakistani Foreign Office. This is great strides that we've taken after last year when we won the war against India, and suddenly we saw ourselves on the global stage of diplomacy. We've been invited everywhere around the world. So fingers crossed, there's meetings going on a few kilometers, maybe just less than 5 kilometers from where I'm sitting in Islamabad. And we'll keep the viewers of SATV posted on what happens in Islamabad today.
Of course, important updates coming from Mohammed Musab, even whilst we are having some sort of disruption. Coming back into the studio, we were hearing Musab, some sort of cooler heads trying to prevail is happening in Pakistan. But in the initial days of this war on Iran, we've seen how Afghanistan and Pakistan were exchanging hostilities between one another. And as John was talking about refugee crisis, reopening into the Balochistan province. I think you wanted to add more on this issue. We know that almost about 230 children have been killed in Iran as well. Children usually are the most affected group of people when a war breaks out. We've seen similar things during the Ukraine-Russia war in eastern Ukraine. So I want to ask you, what are some of the effects, as you see, that may lay over to other nations such as Pakistan?
Well, if you go back and want to look at it in terms of the Russian invasion of Afghanistan and what happened in Balochistan, there were enormous tent cities of people who had fled Afghanistan into Balochistan in Pakistan. And they were radicalized. They were the Taliban. They were the students who were driven out of school early, and they constituted the Taliban in the Balochistan province and went back and then took over the Afghanistan government. The same thing could happen with people who have been offended deeply by the invasion of Israel and the United States. These refugees could constitute a future strike force of Iranians who are so offended by the situation they were put in without any fault of their own, that they could be radicalized and become a force, another type of force that has to be dealt with in the future. These are the kind of unintended consequences of war. I happen to have been in Balochistan while those tents were there and dealt with some of the Afghans at the time, and they were, deeply, deeply offended by the fact that there had been this sort of situation foisted on them with no fault of their own, and we're facing the same thing now. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, we know that Hamas and Hezbollah and other people that sort of now were radicalized and have been supported to sort of go back against Israel. These are 90 million people in Iran. And among the youth and the students, they were going to be deeply offended by the invasion of their space by Israel and the United States. And while there may be off-ramps and peace and all of that to deal with, there is a fundamental problem that has to be dealt with, and that is we are radicalizing a whole cohort of young people in Iran that will come and fight future wars.
Of course, and it's important to understand how we see this. Over the weekend, Ansar Allah Houthis from the Yemen, those who are ruling Yemen, had said that they will close the Bab al-Mandab Strait, which is linking in to the Mediterranean Sea at the Red Sea. The spokesperson Yahya Sari had said that we will be supporting Iran in this war. I just want to understand how Norman Floyd Barnes feels about this, of the triaxis of evil, as Israeli politicians have said. We have Lebanon, and we have Yemen, we have Iran. This triangle is now creating an effect and also making it harder for any kind of interception by the US and Israeli forces. I want to know more from our correspondents abroad. I hope we have Norman Floyd Barnes, if not Mohammed Musab. I want to know how you both are feeling about this.
Hello. Yeah, this is Norman. Yes, this is the situation has it shouldn't be to anyone's surprise that the Houthis are being involved. They're just watching and waiting for the opportunity, and that opportunity has allowed itself. The Red Sea. The Red Sea is another corridor where 12% of the world transportation deal with goods, services, and everything goes through. So we have now the Strait of Hormuz, and we have now the Red Sea being looked at as choke points. The Houthis has sent two missiles to Israel announcing themselves that we are now engaged in this war, which means that the next move will be is to control the Red Sea at the Strait, just like is being done in the Strait of Hormuz. And that is going to cause a real problem for the United States. So now you have, instead of one front, you got two fronts, and we got the front going on with the in Lebanon. What's next? We're looking for, as it stated, the president is looking for an off ramp, a way to get out of this.
Right.
But unfortunately, we are looking like we are in quicksand. We're basically involved in it. We absorb it. We're gonna have to deal with it. You're gonna have to deal with both areas at the same time. So the contemplation of bringing foot troops in is something that's being put on the table, but I do not like that concept because it's a trap.
Of
There's
course.
no way it's going to be successful
Right.
if we put troops on the ground at this time
Right.
in that area. It would be like a trap. It would be more like a trap. So basically, so what you're seeing now is the Houthis are now stirring up the pot, sending missiles over, say, hey, we're in this thing. And the next thing you're going to see is that we're going to put toll gates up in the Red Sea, similar to what's going on. And we're going to shut this whole thing down. The global markets, everybody's going to crumble to the knees. That's what they want to see how the inflation is going to cause how food, transportation, fertilizer, all the essentials, water is going to be an issue as we get on to the situation. So right now, this coalition is developing, and you're going to hear more about it. Comes up with Iran and the Houthis and whoever else that wants to engage in this, how they're going to fight against.
Right. I believe the network connection has been disconnected from Norman Flood Burns as he was talking about the how a second strait has now been targeted by the Houthis, and that will also add on to the energy crisis that we are facing over here in Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to take a short break. Afterwards, we will discuss regarding the troubles of getting gasoline and diesel, not only in Bangladesh but also around International Affairs, I want to change the topic of discussion towards the aftermath and what are the consequences of such war brewing out in the Middle East. I want to focus in the studio with Dr. Nasser. We were talking about various fronts, how the Houthis are playing into this issue with US and Israel, how Israeli defense forces are has a manpower issue. Not only so, it is testing the abilities of the newly formed government here in Bangladesh. It has only been 2 months, and we see that the very first steps included rationing of fuel towards multiple petrol stations here in Dhaka and across the entirety of Bangladesh, the 64 districts. Right now, our Ministry of Energy is saying that even while having a speculated amount, the people are having to stand in longer queues. Motorcyclists are opening their fuel tanks and standing in queues physically, just to have some gasoline for their movement. Of course, many nations in Asia has called out for an energy emergency that includes in the Philippines. They have enough until May. However, they are trying to get the message to the people that this is a very uncertain time in the world and we cannot necessarily guarantee of having enough supply. What is your views on this current government handling of the petrol rationing or fuel rationing that common Bengalis are now changing to live on with?
Okay, in Bangladesh, this is the beginning of one sector. Energy is such a thing that many things are depending on this particular energy. If you talk about the electricity, talk about the transportation cost of goods and especially the food grains, if you talk about the movement of the mass people, or even the production in the industrial sector, mostly the RMG sector, everything is dependent on energy. So it will have a tremendous effect. Right now, what the government has decided not to, or so far it did not increase the fuel price.
Yes, that's a huge success.
Very success in one side, but again, we should say that what is the forecast or planning of the government, how long it can sustain this, because we got an economy after 5th of August where we need to pay huge amount for the international organizations who has given us loan. To repay the loans, we are dependent on tremendous factors, especially our export and everything. So energy cost definitely is giving a blessing. If it is not increased, it is a blessing for our national production or GDP. But at the same time, if you don't get enough revenue, especially in the Middle East, you see the business has been collapsed in the Middle East. So our main foreign currency was coming from the Middle East people. So there is no business. Tourism has totally gone down, and aviation sector is in the lowest possible ebb in the recent history. Even during the Corona period, we did not face this sort of problem in the aviation industry. So everywhere there is a crisis going on, and how long the government can sustain this crisis once the international community cannot afford it. You see, definitely in a recent column I have written that there is a period when the security used to mean that protecting our own land only by any means, by your guns or by your sticks or by your armaments, whatever you do. Now the security has different dimensions: energy security, food security, your biodiversity security. What is going on in Middle East? This bombing and burning of the fuel facilities, infrastructure. What is the impact of the whole environment? Who is calculating that? What is the damage to the environment? So all this comes under the overall picture of the security nowadays. Bangladesh should have planned for that. How long we can sustain this, and if need be, instead of 5 days government office, we could make 1 day for that is the home-based office.
Work from home.
Work from home for 1 day at least in the that used to give the message to the people that we are facing a crisis and combinedly we should face it. And more alarmingly, you see, we are on the 54th year of our independence, but our energy security, the storage capacity of the fuel, that has not increased. but consumption has been increased, and this consumption will multiply in next 10 to 15 years or 25 years. But what is the planning? Have you ever seen in a 5 years plan that storage capacities of the energy will be increased by this fold in any of the manifesto of the political parties?
And then
Nothing like
the
that.
new news includes building another bridge next to the Jamuna and the Padda bridge as well.
Yeah.
So building more bridges, adding on more to the strain of this nation. Not only so, we are not looking at other kinds of electric or other kinds of solutions.
Renewable energy.
Renewable energy includes
Yes.
solar, includes hydropower plants.
Whereas you have lot of chores in the coastal area.
Of course.
Not been utilized for production of food. Saline areas, saline water and salty areas are there. We can very well use it for the, but there is no national planning for that. That is the shocking part.
And of course, that was very important coming from Dr. Nasir regarding the fallout or the crisis that has been taking shape in Bangladesh as due to a war that is happening in the Middle East. A very important comment that he had said was regarding the remittance warriors who are working in various nations of the Middle East. Now they will cease to have any kind of work due to the war. Businesses are facing uncertainty, and of course, that comes in conjunction with foreign investment in those nations. I want to know from John Dalton, you were seeing the nexus between all of this that is combined. Bangladesh is affected, the Philippines are affected, Pakistan, India, and even nations such as South Korea is affected because they depend a lot on crude oil for the semiconductor industry as well. What are your observations? Do you think it will be over before the American midterms, or do you think that this will have a long-term effect on the world?
Well, I think the American involvement will definitely be over before the midterm. They may try to set up some sort of a garrison along the Straits of Hormuz to protect the flow of oil through there. It'll be more theater than substance, but they may try to do that just to occupy some to show that they are concerned about the world economy. But they can no longer sustain the war in Iran on behalf of Israel. They were misled by Mossad. They were told this was going to be a one-day battle. We'll kill Ali Khamenei and then it's over. But they didn't understand, as I said, the structure of the government at all. I also think, though, that it's also beneficial that Bangladesh now has a formal government in place that can do the kind of planning that we're talking about. The 18 months experiment with an interim government, many decisions were made that were ad hoc, that seemed to be short-term, but have had long-term consequences. Trade deals were made that were shown to be like impractical in the current period.
Right.
Many things that were done, a pay rise for all of the bureaucrats of an enormous amount, cannot be sustained if there are not remittances that are coming back, that the government does not have funds to cover some of its obligations. 87% of the remittances, 87% of the workers are in the Middle East. Right. They provide 45% roughly of the remittances. So this is alarming. As the Major has indicated, they're not going to be providing that kind of money because businesses there are closing and there's no future demand for these kind of workers. Someone's going to have to take a long, hard look at where remittances come from. How is it that 55% of the remittances are coming from the developed countries? That seems odd to me, but somebody can do an audit of that. Go ahead. But the current government, I think, is in a position now to be aggressive, take control, do some planning, introduce austerity, cut back on the budget. A very good idea to go to a 4-day work week. I think that would be very effective. They have to show something that they have taken command of the situation. They've got 5 years. Never let a crisis go to waste, as Rahm Emanuel once said. Take advantage of the situation and show that you're ready to do the job.
Of course, and based on your last statement, taking advantage of the situation, we are forgetting one huge global power. I'm talking about Russia. Vladimir Putin has said he will halt all kind of export of its oil and gas towards the world economy from April 1st. And that is going to create a lot of shortages from around the globe. And that is the nexus and how Russia has been charging towards Ukraine. A very short comment from Dr. Nasir before I can end the program. How are you seeing this? Russia finally says no export of its oil and natural resources.
Okay, looking at the role of Russia and China during this war, initially everybody was frustrated that why these tested friends of Iran and hostile friends of USA and Israel is not coming up. But the way they had been slowly supporting Iran in different ways, and the final strike they want to make, Russia has declared, as you have rightly said, the stopping energy supply to the countries of its choice, that is going to give a huge blow onto the world economy. And Donald Trump, I think he has to bow down if this particular one single decision of Russia is being executed. He has to bow, because he already asked for the European Unions to join to get the Hormuz Strait free of Iranian influence. That was not successful. And after that, Russia's main energy is being sent to the European countries. And if that is stopped, entire European Union will have to stand against the war, that is the Donald Trump and Israel. And they are in their homeland, they are under crisis, they are under pressure. And top of that, if there is a pressure from the European Union and other communities, and if the Middle East people now, the way they have been looking towards Ukrainian defense or Ukrainian military support, if it takes place officially, I think USA and Israel will have to say, I will not be surprised if they leave Iran or the surrounding area the way they left Vietnam or they left Afghanistan. That will not be what I am afraid of. I have written in my latest column also. They will target now countries like Yemen and Jordan or the Lebanon, and there will be some huge success of the US troops there in Yemen, Jordan, and Lebanon, and they will say our mission is achieved. We have finished the proxy enemies, and now Iran is under pressure. So our mission is achieved. We go back.
Of course, important statements coming from Dr. Nasser. I want to conclude the program here today. It has been a lovely discussion. I want to thank my panelists in the studio, Major Nasiruddin Ahmed as well as John Talton. I thank you both gentlemen for your contribution and insights towards this worldwide situation, discussing it all on international affairs, alongside thanking Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington, D.C., and as well as Mohammad Musab from Pakistan. I'm finishing on a fact. Today is March the 29th. And on this day in 2004, Ireland had become the first country in the world to implement a comprehensive national ban on smoking in all workplaces. Ladies and gentlemen, that was it on International Affairs today. Do stay tuned on all our social media on Facebook and YouTube for upcoming updates. That was it. I shall catch you all on tomorrow's International Affairs.